Welcome to part 4, the last part of this Football Manager 2020 experiment, where I've swapped all of the leagues around. Thank you for the support on parts 1, 2 and 3. If you haven't watched them, make sure you go and check them out first. Now in this part 4, I have holidayed until the year 2057. We're going to take a look at how the landscape of English football has changed. However, to be honest, the landscape of English football hasn't changed massively. In regards to the winners of the Premier League anyway, Liverpool have dominated the last few years. We've seen Man City, Man United and Arsenal also win the league, and likewise for second place. Third place is also very similar. Spurs have featured and Kettering have also managed to finish third. But there are some interesting teams still in the Premier League. The top 4, no massive surprises there. We've still got Man United and Chelsea in the top 10 and Newcastle, West Ham, Southampton. But that hasn't changed a huge amount in 20 years. We've still got those same real-life Premier League teams in the top flight. Obviously, in the last part, we went up until the year 2035, 22 years ago. But that still, it hasn't changed that much, has it? Those teams are still here. And we've not seen that many new additions. Middlesbrough have made it up and just been relegated again. But we've got Dorking in here. Willstone's still up here. Barnet qualified for Europe, so they must have won something. We've also got Kettering. Farsley still in the top flight. Gateshead, Concord Rangers have probably been yo-yoing between for years. Yeah, look at that. Up and down. But Dorking have managed to survive the entirety of this experiment in the Premier League. They almost got relegated a couple of times, close to the bottom. But the rest of the time they've been comfortably in mid-table, even higher. They've never really finished that high. They finished 5th way back in the day. Although that's 20 years ago. I mean, I don't know what it was before this point. I'm not sure if they finished higher than 5th. But once again, 5th this season. So they finished 5th twice in the last 20 years. And Wealdstone, they've had a good time. They were actually relegated once. But they made it back up and they've been comfortably in the Premier League since then. Barnet, likewise, been in the Premier League since they got promoted all those years ago, I think. Kettering, similar story. They were relegated once, but have made it back up again. Farsley, also relegated twice, but back in the top flight after. They were very successful until about this point, and suddenly they dropped off, and they've managed to finish 8th once. But yeah, they're not quite as powerful as they used to be, unfortunately. Gateshead, similar story, been relegated 3 times now after much success. I think they finished 2nd a couple of times. But yeah, they've sort of turned into a bottom half Premier League team, I suppose. So it's not changed a huge amount in the last 20 years, but we've seen some teams drop. We've seen Liverpool, Man City, Arsenal, Spurs continue to dominate. Looking at the stadiums, that has changed. Concord Rangers have a 40,000 seater stadium on Canvey Island. I'm surprised it hasn't sunk, Canvey Island, having that big enough, bit like that bigger stadium. It's massive. 40,000. So that's the biggest one here. We've also got Barnet have a big stadium, Gateshead. So there's certainly been some changes in that regard. Dorking still have a fairly small stadium considering how well they're doing. The Arsene Wenger Park, by the way. David Silva Arena for Man City. And the Jurgen Klopp Stadium for Liverpool. So we've seen some new stadiums built there. Old Trafford still exists. London Stadium, Tottenham Hotspur Stadium. Still around St James's Park as well. Stadium of Light. Stamford Bridge hasn't really changed. But those top 3, interesting. I assume he's not still in charge. When did Jurgen Klopp leave? Oh, he left in 2033. They've been through a few managers since then. Emery has been in charge. Tuchel. And most recently, Nacho. For the last 13 years, in fact. He's been in charge forever. Man City, Anthony is in charge. These are the managers that they've had. A lot. They've had Zinedine and Zidane in charge. Frank Lampard as well. He's now retired. Guardiola returned for almost 2 years. Managed in Qatar and Mexico and Italy. Yeah, interesting journey. That's his playing career, sorry. You can read his biography if you want to see who he managed. Arsenal, let's have a quick look at their manager history. So that's that. And lastly, I'm interested in Dorking. They've got Jack Harrison in charge at the moment. Any other familiar names? They've been through how many managers have they had? If we just get rid of the caretakers, there's still loads of managers. I know it is a long time since the experiment started, but still, they are not patient, are they? The longest they've had a manager for is like 2 years. They must have like really low patience. Don't know if we can actually see that anywhere on this in-game editor. You can see it on the pre-game editor. But either way, they have not been patient whatsoever with their managers. Mainly, I mean, some have left manager role. Everyone else has been sacked. There's very few. Considering how successful they've been, that must just be their philosophy. But perhaps if they actually stuck with someone, they might win something. Have they actually won anything? Runners-up in the Carabao Cup 4 times. That's it. But they're probably the most successful in terms of their consistency, aren't they? Wealdstone, what have they managed to win? So they did, of course, they won the Premier League. They've managed to win the FA Cup, which is good. And the Carabao Cup they won years ago now. But we've not seen a mega successful team ever. Like, they've had far fewer managers than Farsi, still plenty. And they've not been particularly patient, but someone stayed for 5 years. I suppose it's the expectation, all that money they have now, they're expecting more, aren't they? Kettering have probably ramped through the managers because of being relegated a couple of times. And they've managed to not win anything, unfortunately. Runners-up in so many things. Runners-up in the Euro Cup 2, by the way, which is great to see. Who else shall we look at? Farsley. I'm interested in Farsley because they did well for a long time. And then they got relegated. But yeah, most of their teams haven't been particularly patient. They've not had a manager in charge for ages. The big traditional Premier League teams have had long-serving managers, probably because they've won everything. But these other teams haven't. They were runners-up in the Euro Cup, of course, and the FA Cup. 3rd place in the Premier League, runners-up in the Euro Cup 2. They won the Championship, runners-up in the Carabao Cup. It's just been so close for all these teams. They've just not quite been good enough, have they? Gateshead, probably a similar story. Look at what they've managed to achieve. So yeah, runners-up in the Premier League twice, runners-up in the FA Cup, runners-up in the Euro Cup 2. It's just so unlucky for these teams. It's just not quite good enough. It's a real shame. Now, Concord, with the biggest stadium out of all these teams, the new Premier League teams, have really had an interesting journey. I don't know why they've built such a big stadium. Are they attracting loads of fans from the South End area, maybe? Yeah, they must be, because they're getting such a big attendance despite flip-flopping between the leagues. So that's really intriguing how they've managed to attract so many fans. It could be because they've won something, I don't know. These are all their managers that they've had, proper managers. So once again, not particularly patient. And although they have won the FA Cup, of course we saw that, didn't we, already, 2035. But that's it. They've won the Championship 6 times. They're just not quite good enough in the Premier League, and they found themselves being relegated again this year. Let's go down to the Championship then, where Everton have been promoted, maybe for the first time. No, they've been up and down quite a bit. Guiseley, back in the top flight after many years in the Championship. They were the favourites to win the title, the Premier League title, in that first season, but they struggled. They didn't quite achieve what they should have achieved. They've been runners-up in the Carabao Cup. They've won the Championship 4 times, but it's good to see them back. I'm glad there's teams that have kind of, although they're not Premier League quality, they've become teams that flip-flop between the Premier League and Championship, and they're just solid, aren't they? They've not completely dropped down the leagues all the way to the bottom. Plymouth, another example of that, really. They've spent many years in the Premier League after getting promoted to it. They've been relegated a couple of times, but they've done pretty well on the whole. Slough relegated again, but Southport, they're down in the Championship now. They spent a long time in the Premier League, and of course, they won it twice. So although they're lower down than the likes of Farsley and Dorking, at least they've won something. They won the Premier League twice. They've been runners-up in the FA Cup as well. They've won the Championship a couple of times. They've had more success, haven't they? Loads of managers as well. All these clubs seem to have so many managers. How are they doing financially? Loads of money to spend. 80 million in the bank, and big wage budget as well. So that's good. They should be fine for many years to come. But then we said that with Slough, and they keep going in between League One and the Championship, don't they? Aldershot, they're in trouble. Insecure finance. What has happened there? I don't know. They spent too much money. 11.5, sold 11.5. This is a handy graph, isn't it? So they spent loads of money here, and then they've started selling more, I suppose, in recent years. These are the managers that they've had. Aldershot, of course, they won the Premier League. They've only won that, haven't they? Just the Premier League. Just the Premier League. That's great, but no teams have managed to sustain themselves, basically. Let's have a look at the stadiums then. So, wow, Forest Green have a big stadium, don't they? Built in 2052, 5 years ago. They've built another new stadium. Are they filling it then? Yeah, they are. Wow. They're doing... Well, they didn't... that's the Carabao Cup. That doesn't count. But yeah, Championship games, they're doing pretty well. Almost filling it most of the time. But they finished down in 15th in the Championship despite having such a big stadium and attractive people. Brian Clough Arena, by the way. Tonbridge Stadium is big. 35,000. That was built only last year. So they've gone for a big one despite being floating between the Premier League and the Championship. So they must be attracting people as well into the stadium. Yeah, 26,000. 18. It sort of fluctuates quite a bit, to be fair. But they've gone for a big stadium, maybe planning for the future. So there's some big stadiums in the Championship, actually, for these non-traditional Premier League teams. Guiseley Stadium, 25,000 seater. The smallest one is Hampton and Richmond. Allen Devonshire Park. I love that. 5,000. So when was that built? 2022, long time ago. And Hampton and Richmond have been in the Championship pretty much the entire time, apart from being relegated once. So they've got a nice tiny Championship stadium. They're managing their expectations, and yeah, I don't think they've really done much. They've won League One twice, runners up in the Leasing.com trophy. But I like these sorts of clubs that have just been able to sustain themselves at a certain level. They know their level. They've decided to not overspend. They've done really well. They finished 9th in the Championship this season. That's really impressive. I think Eastbourne Borough, similar story. Another Championship club, nice small Championship club, able to sustain themselves at this level. Tonbridge, likewise. I mean, they've been going in between the Premier League and the Championship. But I like those stories. It's good. League One then. We've got Crystal Palace, Leeds and Chesterfield going up. So Leeds promoted for the... Oh no, they've spent a couple seasons in the Championship. But yeah, it's not been great for them, has it? Overall, still playing at Ellen Road. I don't think there's any examples of clubs downgrading their stadiums massively yet, but we might see some at some point. Leeds have been through the managers, no surprises there. They've not won anything in recent years, have they? But yeah, they've been stuck in League One and the Championship, of course. So other teams here, I mean, Hungerford's, they've been up and down between the Championship and League One, as you can see there. Hemel Hempstead's. Yep, Championship and League One as well. So there's a few teams at this level. Aston Villa stuck at this level in League One. So they managed to get up to the League One in the end after being stuck in the non-league for so long. But they're basically a League One team now, looking at that. But they have built a new stadium. And it's pretty decent size, 2030. So they didn't downgrade their stadium despite being at quite a low level at the time. But just look at the stadiums. So yeah, Aston Villa have the biggest ahead of Ellen Road. Coventry, Sheffield United still in League One as well. So yeah, they've not managed to get promoted from League One at all, but they did finally make it up into the Football League after getting stuck for many, many years. So there's a few clubs that were in the Premier League at the start, so they had to build those Premier League stadiums. And now they're down at this level, the likes of Oxford City, Hemel Hempstead and Hungerford. League 2 then, Bradford Park Avenue, getting promoted as champions. That's good to see. So they did actually go all the way down to non-league, but they're back into the Football League and they've just gone back up to League One. That's lovely. I like that. Bolton, Leyton Orient and Reading also going up with them. Swindon and MK Dons relegated. Let's have a quick look at the stadiums. So MK Dons had the biggest. Edmonton Spa, they had to build a new one. So did Weymouth. So a few teams had to build sort of stadiums to fit with the Premier League standards, and other clubs I suppose have grown in size over time and built new stadiums. Some of them are pretty old now, really. I mean, Weymouth is 36 years old. It was built all the way back when they were in the Premier League, of course. I don't think there's any massive surprises here. Birmingham City stuck in League 2 at the moment. They've been up to the Championship, relegated a couple times in a row, basically. And now they're in League 2. Wigan in League 2. Stoke City in League 2. They've spent most of their time in League 1, though, in recent years. Going down to the National League, then. I don't know if there's any clubs really stuck a long way down. You might have spotted a club that I just overlooked. But yeah, the National League, Shrewsbury and Blackpool getting promoted. Curzon Ashton. The sorry story of Curzon Ashton. I mean, what did they do in that first season? I think they finished 4th, didn't they, in the Premier League, or 3rd, something like that. But they've really dropped off, despite having all that money. Let's look at their finances. They're in debt now. They're in trouble. But they did finish 2nd in the National League this year. But they've turned back into a non-league club, which is a real shame. Because did they build a big stadium in the end? They didn't, so they didn't actually build one. Dulwich Hamlet also relegated a long way down. But I think these clubs... Dulwich Hamlet have a bigger reputation than Curzon Ashton. 2 stars. Corinthian Casuals. I think... where were they at the start? I have no idea. They might have been in below the National League, actually. Let's have a quick look at the stadiums. I find this interesting. I mean, Bradford City have a really big stadium for this level. They've not managed to get a non-league the whole time, have they? National League North, won by Blythe. Yes. I mean, it's sad that they've gone all the way down to this level, but still, it wasn't that long ago that they were in the Football League, relegated all the way down to the National League North. This is the saddest story because, of course, they won the Premier League in the first season, and now they find themselves, how many years later? 40 odd years later, winning the National League North. And that's just sad. It really is. They've got their stadium that they built for the Premier League. Finally finished in 2025, when by that point they were in the Championship. And I very much doubt they fill it, if we just have a look. 383 people. They must feel so empty, that stadium. Look at the attendance. They just don't have the fan base, do they? Do they have the money? Do they still have money? Let's have a quick look. No. They're in debt. They're back where they started, which is a real shame. But it's good to see them going back up to the National League. Grimsby also going up with them. I don't think there's any massive teams at this level. We've not seen the likes of Huddersfield get back up again, have we? Let's just have a quick look at them. Still in the depths of English football, and I imagine they've still got all the money because it's kind of frozen in time for them. I wonder what would happen if they suddenly got promoted. I presume they'd lose all the money. I feel like it's waiting for them to get promoted again for that to kind of reset. But I'm not really sure. But I didn't realise that was a thing. I didn't realise teams could go down, be stuck below this level, but still have all their money. National League South. Dagenham and Redbridge and Chippen. I wanted to look at the stadiums. I forgot to look at the stadiums. That's one of the fun things. There we go. So Peterborough, the biggest one. Then it's Blythe. Kings Lynn, of course, they built a new stadium when they were in the Premier League. They've dropped all the way down as well. Same with Halifax, maybe? Can't remember where they started, actually. They've got a big stadium anyway, don't they? So I'm not entirely sure about them. National League South. So this is the story. It doesn't look too dissimilar to a real National League South table, does it? Chelmsford City all the way down here again. Bath City. Those are 2 teams that started towards the top, Championship or Premier League, can't remember which. But there's a lot of teams that have dropped all the way back down, which is a real shame. So there'll be some okay sized stadiums at this level because teams had to build new stadiums, of course. Chelmsford built one in 2024. Bath City built one as well for the Championship. So, yeah, there's some sad stories, but there's also some good stories. Yes, the landscape of English football has changed. It's not changed dramatically, but it certainly has changed a bit, hasn't it? And I'm so pleased to see Barnet win the FA Cup twice. We saw Concord Rangers win it, of course, and since then it's only really Barnet that have been the interesting team. It's just so boring. We've actually made these teams stronger because in real life, of course, you have the odd team like Wigan win the FA Cup, or Portsmouth, or Everton, or those sorts of teams. It's not always Arsenal, Man United, Man City. Yes, they win most of them, but they don't always win the FA Cup. But by doing this experiment, it's made the big teams stronger in some ways because they don't have as much competition from the mid-tier Premier League teams because they've got stuck in lower leagues, they've become weaker, and it's enabled Man City, Liverpool, Arsenal, etc. to dominate English football even more than they would have done without this happening. So it's quite strange in a way. But I'm pleased Barnet have managed to win the FA Cup. Let's go down to the Carabao Cup. Similar story. We've seen Barnet win it. So Barnet have been successful in the Cups, haven't they? Really successful. Look at them. 3 FA Cup wins. They've won the Euro Cup as well. Oh, wow. So I think Barnet are probably the most successful team. I can't remember which division they started in. But out of the non-Premier League teams, they have been the most successful. 2 Euro Cup wins, 2 Super Cup wins, 3 Euro Cup wins. 3 FA Cup wins. They've finished second in the Premier League. They've done really well. They've not had too many managers either. Intriguing. Newcastle won it. Sunderland also managed to win it. Runners up, we've seen Plymouth and Dorking. Dorking have been unlucky. Tonbridge, Farsley. There's a few teams that have been runners up. Been a bit unlucky. Community Shield. No surprises there. Leasing.com trophy. Kettering under-23s runners-up, so they must have a decent under-23s to reach the final. FA trophy for you. Charlton have made it back to League One, by the way. 2 successive promotions. Of course, they were stuck in non-league. They went all the way out of the Football League pyramid. Unlike Huddersfield Town, they got promoted back, and they've actually made their way back, and they're in League One. Yes, they got relegated this year, but that's pretty impressive considering what happened to them early on. English teams have continued to dominate in the Champions League, by the way. Man United have won it 4 times. I think Liverpool have won it multiple times. Arsenal have won it as well. Man City have managed to win it. So it's real dominance from the English teams. And this is where things get interesting. The Euro Cup, because of course we've seen Barnet win it 3 times. They beat Atletico Madrid in the final. They beat Bayer Leverkusen. They beat Juventus. They've been runners-up against Man City. Sunderland have been runners-up as well in this competition. But we have seen Spurs and Arsenal also manage to win it, and Man United. And then Euro Cup 2, Barnet have won this twice as well. So let's just scout up and see. Spurs runners-up 3 times in a row. Barnet beat Feyenoord. Celtic have won it. Gateshead have reached the final. Kettering have reached the final. Barnet beat Lazio. And that's it, I think. Super Cup winners. So we've seen Barnet win that twice, which is good. Good to see. World Cup, England have managed to win it twice. This is the England national team these days then. So Manuel Farrell in charge. And top clubs is this Barnet. They're up there. 4.5-star reputation. Willstone 4.5 stars as well. So is Sunderland, Dorking. So yes, we've seen it's annoying that, you know, Liverpool, Man United, Arsenal, Man City have dominated. But it's brilliant that the likes of Barnet and Willstone have managed to stay in the top flight and become really powerful teams. I love that. That is just brilliant. Let's have a look at the national team. So yes, we do a Barnet player in there. We've got a Dorking player in there. We've got a Sunderland player in there. We've got a Willstone player in there. But mainly Man United, Man City, etc. European Championships. So England managed to win that once and also runners-up as well. I don't think there's going to be any surprises in the Golden Ball. Just looking at the winners. Arsenal players. Yeah, these teams have become so dominant, haven't they? Footballer of the Year, similar. Financially, Barnet 6th biggest turnover. Sunderland 5th biggest turnover in England. Willstone 9th. This is really intriguing how things have changed. I love that. This has been every year. I really find this experiment interesting. Similar things happen, but we have different teams featuring at the top. I think. I feel like Willstone have featured at the top before, maybe Barnet as well. But we do have different things happening. But I think we'll end it there. That is the end of this football swapped experiment thing. If you do want to download the database, links are in the description below once again. As always, if you have any ideas for experiments, then let me know. And I have a list. I have a list of ideas, which I tend to go back to every now and then. It's whether I can be motivated to do it or not half the time. But this experiment I always enjoy every year, and I'll probably do it again next year, to be honest. I don't see any reason not to, because it's also a popular database that people enjoy playing on. Not just for this experiment, it's people enjoy actually playing on the database, and it always gets quite a few downloads on the Steam Workshop, which I much appreciate. But until next time, enjoy FM20, enjoy the rest of your day. I'll see you very soon.